quote is so old now. It's like from 1980. It's Steve Jobs back in back before everything. This is like 1980.
Back before everything. Welcome to episode 26 of Rockstar CMO FM. The M is for marketing, the F is for, well, you decide. As you're probably asking yourself, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? I'm your host, Ian Truscott, founding editor of Rockstar CMO, your monthly dose of marketing street knowledge. You can find us at rockstarcmo.com or Rockstar CMO on Twitter and LinkedIn. This episode was recorded on Friday the 4th of September. I hope you've had a good week, you're staying safe, well, and as sane as you feel you need to be. And I'm glad you're here. If you're enjoying the show, drop us a rating, comment, or it would be wonderful to hear from you. I'm sticking to the usual set list. In a moment, I'll take a look at the latest issue of Rockstar CMO. I chat to Ian Lowe, VP Marketing of Crownpeak, a digital experience and content management platform, and I again have the opportunity to retire to the virtual Rockstar CMO bar for a cocktail and a chat with my friend and content marketing guru, Robert Rose. Right, let's get started, shall we? As regular listeners will know, while this is a weekly podcast, the web and newsletter versions of Rockstar CMO is a monthly publication. And this week saw the launch of the September issue, and that's what I'd like you to take a look at this week. 2020 has been a bit of a blur. Many people talk about how lockdown has changed their routine to the point they're unsure about what day, week, or maybe even what month it is. And our work and home lives have become blurred. Do we work from home? Or are we now doing home at work? And that's the theme for this month. Those blurry lines. It's a fabulous issue as a dozen of our wonderful community of CMOs, senior marketers and writers give us lots of advice for dealing with that blurry line. And in the month that saw an outspoken marketing social media commentator, Tom Goodwin, relieved of his position at Publicis for his views on the coronavirus, we also talk about the line on social media between our personal and professional passions. Aside from splendid articles from our house band of writers, we have the regular features. We discuss the topic of the issue in the green room. We have a new nomination for the Rockstar CMO swimming pool and spin the dial on the interwebs with our sample feature that suggests other articles that might help you when dealing with those blurry lines. We name each issue after a classic album, and with a theme like that, the album chose itself. It had to be the 1997 album Blur by the Blur, the British Britpop act. And for a change, I might have actually picked something that others will agree is a classic. NME once ranked it at number 137 in its list of 500 greatest albums of all time. Please take a look at the issue. I'm incredibly grateful to everyone that contributed. Please share their work, and you can find the Blur issue on our website, rockstarcmo.com. Click on the latest issue. And I will, of course, include a link to it in the show notes. Right, so on to the interview. Ian Lowe leads marketing technology software provider Crownpeak's marketing and communications as VP of marketing. He's a marketing executive with 20 years of marketing and technology experience, with most of the last 10 years in the web content management space. We chat about his journey from technologist to marketer, how his team have worked during COVID, and a surprising nomination for the Rockstar CMO swimming pool. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hi, Ian. Thanks for joining me on Rockstar CMO FM. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great, Ian. Thanks very much for having me on today. I feel really lucky, everything that's going on in the world, me, my friends, my family, we're staying healthy and safe. And that's the most critical thing for all of us, I guess. How about you? How are you doing?
That's true. Yeah, no, we're doing all right. We're doing okay in the UK. We're kind of easing our way out of lockdown. I suppose the schools are going to start in a couple of weeks, so the kids will be back. So that's where we are. And where are we speaking to you at?
I live in Barrie, Ontario, which is about an hour north of Toronto, Canada.
Oh, nice. Toronto's a lovely city. I'm a little bit familiar with it. I've been there a couple of times. Very nice. Now, you've been featured on the Backstage Q&A inside the pages of Rockstar CMO. I think we spoke to you last year. But for our listeners who don't know who you are, tell us a bit about your current role and who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently I run marketing for Crownpeak. Crownpeak is a digital experience platform company that also has products for digital governance and quality and privacy and consent. And I've been here moving on 2 years. It'll be 2 years in November. Mm-hmm. And, my background is actually pretty interesting. I started off from a technologist background as a developer and then ran IT functions, but always kind of in service of sales and marketing, and slowly migrated over to the marketing stack and have made my career now out of helping marketing in the tech space.
Yeah, it's amazing because a number of people, I mean, including myself, started off as developers and turned, or techies and turned marketers. I was talking to Tom Wentworth last week, exact same story. What was your transition? What drove you from, I mean, here's my experiences. We were in pre-sales at vendors, but what was your experience and what was the trigger that turned you into a marketer, if you like?
It was really the web. We started off, developing applications and software and databases, usually in service of sales and marketing, because that was what was growing companies.
Yeah.
And then, as the web became a more and more important part of everybody's tech stack, everybody's go-to-market, it slowly sort of took over what you were doing from an IT perspective. And there was this great synergy between what were you doing technologically to get your vision and your messages up on the web, engaging with audiences, and the technical skills to make it work, and the marketing know-how to make those messages really impactful and empowering. Mm-hmm. And so, working with marketers and sales organizations for so long and building applications, it just really felt natural to start expanding that sort of more creative, growth-driven mindset out of just sort of systems operations and into the systems of marketing. And for me, it's really sort of that operational side that really appeals to me to marketing. I love the creativity, the messaging, the design, all that kind of stuff is really thrilling. But marketing, especially today with how we've developed and enlarged our marketing technology stacks, the way we just approach everything from an analytical and systematic perspective, there is a strong, systematic technological approach to marketing that layers on top of all that brand stuff that we've been doing forever in marketing.
Yeah. So you're a kind of a technologist turned marketing technologist turned marketing operations turned marketing guy, kind of.
Yeah, that's the career path. Absolutely.
Yeah, really interesting. And you've worked for a number of large vendors along the way as well, haven't you?
So here at Crownpeak for 2 years. Before that, I was at Sitecore for 7.5. Before that was engagements in a couple of big Canadian companies, Able Pest Control, which is like the Terminix of Canada. And before that, a company that eventually became actually the Canadian division of TruGreen. So both in that B2C space, really, cut my teeth there and then migrated over into Sitecore into that B2B enterprise tech sales.
Yeah. And what do you think you learned from B2C when you made that transition to B2B?
So when you're dealing with B2C, I mean, there's this real driver, this belief that you have these individual consumers who are engaging with that one particular purchase that's meaningful for them.
Yeah.
But when you look at those groups of people all together, you start seeing patterns in the data and start seeing motions and movements that only happen when you have large sets of data.
Right.
Now, we've taken those same tools and techniques and started applying them in the B2B space over the last several years, but you still have that idea that with those consumer engagements, you get such a large volume of data and history that you build up in your relationship that it really allows you to understand, their motivations, their psychology, what are their needs and wants, that allows you to refine your business, work with them better, and drive a more profitable relationship on both sides of it. Better for the consumer because they get more what they want, and better for the business because they're able to drive a more profitable engagement.
Yeah, really interesting. And when we chatted backstage, and this sort of, I guess, talks about your background from a marketing technologist and operations perspective, but you cited good Good to Great by Jim Collins as an influence over your marketing career.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the way you described it as a glimpse of the operating systems of great organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a bit about that. You kind of really interpreted that book in that way.
Well, I think that a lot of people who start off from a technology perspective, you start off as a developer, working in code can seem so clean and easy. You provide a series of instructions, the computer does exactly what you tell it to, whether that was right or wrong, whether it's got bugs or not, it's going to do what you told it to do.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people who engage with sort of product marketing or product driven SMEs can get this, relationship where there's like this idea that there's an absolute way to interpret things, and it's very systematic an approach. And then you look at business and marketing and sales, and it can feel very, squishy, very sort of ill-defined, not really structured. And I think that you'll probably agree with me. Many technologists kind of don't like the business side, in part maybe because of that.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, I was agreeing with you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you read, Good to Great and the other similar books in the series, what it did for me is help me understand that actually there's a systematic approach that works when you talk about how do you define your business structures, how do you deal with who you want to work with, what are the goals and aspirations for the organization and the departments. And what I said there is that it feels kind of like the operating system for a business, because it's beyond just the human beings interacting, but how do you set up those systems and processes, beliefs and values in a way that humans are going to be successful inside of that organization and be able to work together towards a goal that's greater than any of them individually could have done.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting. It is a really, it's a great book. I'm a big fan of lots of marketing books, but that one's great. Also, and talking about the way the organization is working, I mean, we're in hopefully the tail end, I don't know, in the start, who knows, of this pandemic, right? How's that worked with running your own team? I mean, presumably you're a large spread remote team right over at Crownpeak.
Yeah, I mean, I've been kind of lucky. The pandemic has been, for me personally, relatively benign. A lot of people are struggling, and it's been a real challenge for them. I've been working remote for 10 years and managing teams remotely, in the US and Canada, in Europe and elsewhere remotely. So the transition to remote only work that a lot of us had to go through with was pretty straightforward for me. Right. Now, I was also lucky at Crownpeak because everyone had at least one work from home day. So everybody was already more or less prepared for work from home. I think everybody had to go through adjustments, particularly if suddenly, both people in a relationship might be working from home. You might not be ready for that. So I think people have to go through these adjustments, but it was a relatively smooth transition. And what we found actually at Crownpeak is the amount of, energy, investment, really went up. Everybody really had that we're in this together attitude. And we knew we were going to go through a challenging macroeconomic environment. Everybody kind of took a deep breath back in March and April and said, how do we, not just Crownpeak, everybody in the world, like, how do we reforecast? What is this going to mean? For the tech industry has been pretty good. Other industries obviously affected more severely, but everybody really buttoned down. And in fact, we've had to go through periods of just like really helping people, schedule some time off, get those breaks.
Right.
So when a lot of people were taking those furloughs or breaks because of the way their organization was running, we were running full tilt. Yeah. So for us at Crownpeak, what we found is there was so much to do. You had to change messaging and perspectives and advertising and really get nitty gritty on the performance of every ad unit. Because we did a reforecast, we had to extract every ounce of value we possibly could out of our demand dollars, rebuild our budget. So, that period of most intense activity, which would have run, mid to late March, probably through June or July. I mean, it's been really intense, really great for the team. What we've had to do is just, specifically in marketing is particularly because we're remote, where once we had like 15-minute daily stand-ups, meet with my leadership team, now we're doing, full hours every day just to make sure we're getting the brain power in the room. We're all thinking about the same problems, going through the list of what we're trying to tackle, updating. Things are a little bit better now, but I mean, there was a time there where it seemed like the focus and what was working wasn't working was changing every week. So you had to, like, every
Yeah.
day you had to be thinking, hey, what's going on? What's going to be the next thing? How do we engage with it? Hey, we ran these tests last week. Are they yielding yet? What are we going to do? Just a really high amount of focus. I think most people are now, not that the pandemic is over, not that COVID is over, but we're kind of getting in many organizations to a sort of like, hey, we kind of know what this is going to look like for the next several months. And now we're sort of extracting to a more strategic planning level. How are we going to operate? That no longer seems like weekly changes. Maybe they're monthly changes, which allows you to react and build more comprehensive results. More comprehensive responses.
And has that sort of more strategic, calm view, is that reflected in your clients as well as the way you guys are operating? Are you seeing the business climate sort of calming down a little bit as well?
I think when it first broke out, there was generally three kinds of responses. You'd have organizations, who might be in a particularly strongly affected industry, who were just like, hey, these projects, these digital experience projects, they're off the table for now. We got to go work on some other things. You had other organizations who were like, hey, we have to reforecast. We have to go, rebuild our budgets and our plans, and we're going to come back in a month. And then other people who were like, digital is the only thing we have left. We need to accelerate these projects.
Right.
And the big question I think everybody had is, okay, which one was going to win out? Where was the weight of the industry going to go? And I make the joke that, when we all went into this, we were trying to forecast, every company was trying to forecast, is it going to be bad, worse, or worst?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think most of us have decided, unless you're in a badly affected industry, right? There are industries that have been really impacted. But it's probably not worst for most people. And it's a question of what's the upside. We've been seeing a lot of upside. We see a lot of businesses who are like, hey, this is happening. Either, hey, this is temporary. The economy's coming back. We got to grow with it. Digital's like super important. We have to get just a fantastic digital experience. Other organizations are really emphasizing agility and speed. They have to be able to move quickly, and they're looking for solutions that are going to allow them to really ratchet up their flexibility and agility as they respond to market conditions like we've just gone through.
Yeah, and that's presumably the freedom to ratchet up and ratchet down, right? That they can turn it on and off. And I thought it was really, really interesting because you guys published some interesting data at the beginning, didn't you, of the pandemic of because you've got a SaaS platform, right? So you can see what people are doing centrally, and it showed that marketers are ramping up their content activities. In fact, I think you were saying that it was an almost 9-fold increase in web publication happening in sort of March, April time. Tell us a bit about that report, what you found through that, and is that something that's continued, or is there just this big spike, or what happened?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, we're a SaaS platform, so we take care of all sort of the infrastructure and maintenance for our customers, but that also means that we see their operations executing all against our central multi-tenant platform, and we're able to see what they're doing as they go in and make edits, make changes. And what we looked at was not just people going in and making edits and changes, but when they were publishing those changes out to their website.
Yeah.
And so we kind of saw this spike up. It impacted, we could see the volume of Systematica, demand. So we scaled that up. None of our customers, even knew that was happening, but we just sort of took care of that transparently for them. And we're like, what's happening here? And we dug into it, cracked that open, and we saw in that post-COVID period, the number of publish events as people took new content live on their site, basically doubled overnight and was spiking. We'd have like a day of 4 times edits across the customer base. And we had one day in particular, was a Sunday, where the daily edit volume went up by 9x. People were just, and that was at the tail end of March. I think there was a break there. For me, the day that it happened in North America anyway, for me was right at the beginning of March when the NBA canceled the season. Or I guess they didn't cancel the season, they're back now, but they postponed all their games. And that really sort of seemed to take it from, hey, COVID's serious to, oh no, this is like something completely new. And there seemed to be a lag there of 1 or 2 weeks. Was everybody, yes, there was a lot of edits, lots of changes. People or organizations were trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to respond? What are we going to do about this? And that kind of pushed through their organization and really ramped up with that publishing volume. And the publishing volume has maintained. I think I go back to that idea that the pace of change, what's happening in the market is kind of stayed high. This isn't something where you publish something back at the end of March and then you didn't have to touch anything again for the rest of the year. This is ongoing changes and tunings and updates as these big B2C and B2B organizations attempt to communicate with their customers. Right now, we're still running considerably higher than pre-COVID. Lots of edits and changes, but I think there's two elements to that. One is just like pure COVID response.
Yeah.
The second thing is organizations have realized they either have to or that they can on our platform update as frequently as they achieved, and that's risen them up to a new level of like, hey, look how much more we could be doing,
right?
Or alternatively, how much more we absolutely need to be doing because digital is the only reliable channel left. And either way, that's what we're seeing today.
Yeah, I was wondering because what I thought was interesting about the data was that it was from the consumption end, and you could see what was really happening. And a lot of people are talking about the fact that COVID has accelerated digital transformation within organizations, but also techniques like virtual selling. And both of those really need us to lean into content marketing and content management and to get better at that. Do you think are you seeing an indicator of that, do you think, in your data?
Yeah, we're seeing it both like in the quantitative data and the qualitative conversations.
Yeah.
There's for years we've been talking about digital transformation, what that's going to do, and there's that joke about who ran digital transformation, was it marketing, IT, or COVID?
Yeah,
that's the world we live in. And I go back to that statement, like digital is the only reliable channel left. You've got to make this thing work, be effective. And what we're finding is organizations are starting to realize that, like with anything, we can even go back to it's a great conversation. Like with anything, it's more about the execution, great execution rather than just sort of being happy with the current or the status quo, rather than building, hey, let's do this really huge project that ultimately will garner results. People are looking like, hey, no, we have to be delivering now. We can't wait 2 or 3 or 4 years for some ROI on this thing. What can we be doing today that is going to materially shift our numbers, materially going to change the course that we're currently on and get us a better relationship with the customer, increase demand, whatever the metric is to drive it. So what we're seeing, I think you find this backed up by the analysts in the industry, is a real focus on agility. How fast can you move? How fast can you change directions? How fast can you iterate? Seems to be coming top of mind, which is particularly good for us because that's been our focus from the beginning. But I think that's just the general census in the market that you can't be in a position where it takes you 3 months to change direction. You've got to be able to change direction inside of a week now.
Yeah. And that's your customers. As you as a marketing leader, I presume that you used to do a lot of events and stuff like that. How have you seen that transition yourself? Did you switch to virtual events? How have you seen them to be successful?
Well, we've leaned, virtual events. We've leaned into webinars. We've been sort of keeping our pulse on the virtual events like that would have been trade shows previously.
Yeah.
Our focus is really during this period has been on audiences are ready to engage and take action.
Yeah.
And so it's really trying to service them. It's almost not it's an enterprise sales motion what we do. So it's not like people are just going to come in and click a couple buttons and be done with it. But it's really helping them, if they're ready to engage, help them get into understanding what the product does and talking to us as fast as possible.
Right.
And that's really paying off for us. Really engaging with audiences. They know they need to do something. They know what they want to do. They've already identified, this 70, 80% of the sales process is done before they even talk to you. So they've already seen our differentiators on our website, about agility and cost of ownership and so on. So they're ready to go. And you've got to be ready to engage on them the moment they come through. And that's where a lot of our focus has been, is just understanding that psychology better, understanding the marketing messages that lean into that. And that's really paid off for us. Yeah,
no, that's really good. I'm going to ask the final question now. And as you know, because you're a Rockstar CMO regular, we have a regular feature called the Rockstar CMO Swimming Pool, in which we throw all the snake oil bullshit and rubbish from the industry that we love And in our backstage Q&A, you threw, and I love this because so many marketing technologists or people from technology background look at technology as to what they want to throw in the swimming pool. And you threw digital transformation suites, which I think points at some of the things we've discussed already. Are you sticking with that, or would you like to nominate something else?
I think it's as true today as it was when we did that interview. The fundamental issue is that there is no substitute for the hard work of marketing and lining up your strategy against that work you're trying to do, the audiences you're trying to engage with, and then building a tech stack against that strategy. And far too long, I've been guilty of this too. This isn't just me. I think everybody kind of falls into this trap from time to time, is we'll go out, we'll be like, hey, we need, in our case, a new content management system, but it might be marketing automation, it might be CRM, and whatever you're looking for. Yeah. And you go out with an idea if you need a solution, and you end up getting sold on the bells and whistles, or, look at all this cool stuff this other thing does. It's going to take care of digital transformation for you. It's going to automate, understanding your audiences. It's going to, automatically increase your basket size, whatever it is. And you kind of say, oh, I need that in my life because it's going to make my life easier and it's going to help us grow. But it's not necessarily aligned with your strategy. And so you bring this technology into your organization and find out you have to start adapting your whole organization, your processes, your systems, and in fact, your strategy in order to fit the technology rather than the other way around. So that's what gets me is not necessarily the suites themselves. It's just that they're so big and monolithic and all encompassing is they can end up driving out the actual hard strategy work that the marketers are trying to do and trying to substitute their own, which may or may not fit. I think most organizations are going to be a lot happier when they're able to go in and say, I'm trying to do, here's the things that are most important to me. Here's the things I'm trying to do over the next 12 to 24 months. Then finding that technology that actually fits directly into those drivers, they're going to get much faster results, much harder ROI. I'm reminded of, oh man, this quote is so old now. It's like from 1980. It's Steve Jobs back in back before everything. This is like 1980.
Back before everything,
right? This is the still selling the Apple II Plus or whatever it was. Yeah. And he was saying that computers are like bicycles for the mind. So you get on the thing and it just helps you go faster. It dramatically increases your efficiency. And I think of marketing technology the same way. It's like the bicycle for your marketing. It should help you become more efficient, should help you increase your reach. But it doesn't actually eliminate the work. I mean, you still got to get on that thing. You got to pedal. If in fact you're not used to it, it can be a little hard to get going as you learn these new muscles and systems. And the thing is, though, you have to get the right bicycle for you. If you get the wrong bicycle, if you get like some high performance Tour de France bicycle as your first, you know what I mean? Like you just got to make sure you're getting what's right for you. That's going to actually allow you to do what you're trying to do. You're trying to get down to the shop. What are you trying to do? Same thing with marketing technology. Just make sure you're going and picking that best of breed solution that's going to drive your results today, because driving the results today is what earns you the budget for the next step tomorrow. You can't wait 4 years for that anymore.
Never build your requirements based on the demo.
Absolutely.
And I think I've been in the web content management industry the content management industry or the DXP industry or whatever you want to call it today for like 20 years since Vignette. And I think people have been saying that the whole time, right? Is we keep changing the acronyms, but actually people want to do a lot of the same basic stuff, right? Is they want to publish pages to the website. They want to manage that in some personalized way. They want to manage the customer data. We've just changed the acronyms all the time, right?
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Ian. A real pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for your ongoing collaboration with us on Rockstar CMO. Really like your inputs. And then finally, when our listeners spin the dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you?
I post on LinkedIn pretty frequently. I'm at how do their URLs work? Things like linkedin.com/in/idlow, or you can find me on Twitter @idlow.
Yeah, and I have often. Well, it's very nice to speak to you. Thank you, Ian, and I look forward to speaking to you again.
That's great, Ian. Thanks very much.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ian. I will, of course, include all the links we discussed in the show notes. And it seems every technologist turned marketer that I chat to has a view that maybe we're leaning too heavily on the tech. Very interesting perspective. Right. It's Friday evening here at the Rockstar CMO penthouse in London. I'm about ready to call it a day and ease my way into the weekend with a trip to the Rockstar CMO virtual bar and join my friend and content marketing guru, Robert Rose. Good evening, Robert. What are you drinking?
Oh, hello, my friend. It's so good to hear your voice. Yes. Well, I have to tell you, I am super excited this week for the cocktail, especially as we come out of lockdown and are, well, not come out of lockdown, but are still in lockdown for some portions of our country anyway. The drink that I'm drinking tonight is something I'm calling an icy football.
Ooh.
So there are lots of puns there, right? So there's the IC, like I actually observe, and then there's IC. You see what I did there? It's a dad joke, I know, but
it's
it is what it is. IC football. So yes, American football is back, and they're actually going to play, and I'm actually going to get to see it, and I am such a super fan of American football that I decided to call this week's cocktail that, and it's also chock-a-block full of vitamin C. It is absolutely a vitamin C health tonic with orange juice, a little bit of grapefruit juice, a little bit of lemon, a little bit of lime, and then, of course, a healthy dose of Reposado tequila.
Nice. Like I always say every week, your drinks always sound like health tonics. And
this one in particular, and when you get all that juice in there, it really, it's you'd think you sort of you have to balance them based on your preference. Like I don't really love orange juice, so I only have a splash of it. Really, the grapefruit and the lime and the hint of lemon just sort of make it really tangy and
sounds delicious. Well, I'm going to give it a go. So, did you put ice in it?
Yes, it's icy football. So
that's right. You did say that. Let me put some ice here. All right. What have I got here? I've got something very similar. I've got Hendrick's gin. How does that sound?
That I think will suffice in a pinch. Yes.
In a pinch. Let me just give that. Oh, that sounds good, doesn't it? Bit of gin. Lovely. And then some fruit drinks, you said.
Yes, that's right.
Some orange juice,
orange, grapefruit, lime, and a hint of lemon. Yes.
All right. What I've got here is tonic.
Tonic. I think that will apply.
Just
I think that's the fruit juice. I think they think that's.
I think, but it's packed full of something healthy, isn't it? Quinine or something.
Packed full of tonic, I think, is what it's.
Yeah, but isn't it stops you from getting malaria or something, doesn't it? Or is that the gin?
It's going to prevent malaria. That is true.
Oops, I've dropped that. There we go. Nice gin and tonic. A nice, what was it called?
It's called an icy football for the American football that we're going to get to witness here coming up.
That is delicious. And I understand, I probably understand expensive tequila as well as I understand American football.
There you go. Which is about as much as I understand. Well, that's not true. I actually have a fairly good grasp of actual football, European football.
I would like us to discuss American football more, but I couldn't hold the conversation too long. Apart from Go Cowboys, I think is.
Thank you very much. Yes, that's really all you need to know.
And presume something terrible about
Chelsea and go for the Dallas Cowboys.
Well done. And something terrible about Cleveland or something.
It's something terrible about Cleveland. Cleveland says something basically that they are terrible, so it's sort of self-evident. You don't even really need to say anything.
Well, I'm impressed with myself. I managed to hold a 1-minute conversation about American football, so that was fantastic. Yeah. Now, So are we sitting in the stands and drinking this and watching your Cowboys?
Absolutely. We are in the heart of Texas, which is Dallas,
Nice.
where I grew up and became a Cowboys fan. And this would be the perfect drink so you can actually get cocktails in the football stadium these days and spend, hundreds of dollars on a tequila. But what I would tell you is that we basically would sneak a flask in, is what we would. You and I would sneak a flask in, because that would be the way we would get really good tequila into the stadium. And then we would buy one of the either fruit juices there or and then just basically spike it. So
nice. That's what I mean. I as you know, I lived in the US a couple of times, and for us, if you're a football fan, the alcohol in the ground is not, you can't sit there and drink a beer while you're watching the football. And I loved it when I was there, and I went to baseball games, I went to soccer games. Sorry, I should say soccer. And you're having a beer and eating peanuts. It's fantastic. You've really got it right over there, I think.
That is the one thing I will say about American sports culture that we have done well is baseball and football. And the way that it is observed, and especially interestingly, the way both have evolved in cuisine. And I say that in all seriousness, because you can go to a baseball game now. For many of the stadiums have improved so much the level of food that you can get there, and whether you're getting burgers or hot dogs or quite frankly, lots of really interesting things too, from kebab to, bowls to, all sorts of things. The food and drink at stadiums has really increased quite a bit. But yes, there's nothing better than an ice cold beer, watching a baseball or a football game and just hanging out with your friends.
Yeah. That sounds great. So you're actually physically going to go to a game?
Well, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how everything works out, with travel, and all that, because I'm here in LA. And so that means getting on a plane and staying in hotels and doing all that, which is probably not the smartest thing to do. But they are promising live people in the stands. So we'll see, we'll see if they can keep up with that.
Good luck with that. The other thing I know about American football is there's quite a lot of stoppages and advert breaks and stuff. So we'll get some time to chat, I should imagine, if we're sitting, sipping these and watching your beloved Cowboys. What snatched conversation will we have between the plays?
Well, hopefully we wouldn't talk too much business while we're actually...
I think we talk too much business in all of these lovely places we go to.
But here's the thing, something that has been on my mind lately, which is, whenever I'm thinking and teaching and working with a client on content marketing, and this is digital marketing, right? So sort of full stop. I get two questions, right? So, and I don't know if you've witnessed this as well, but the two questions I get in tandem, right? So it's almost always together. It's not separate from each other, but is, how do I scale content marketing because I'm being pressured to create more content for more digital channels than ever before? Yeah. And then the second question, which is immediately attached to it, which is, how do I measure it? And the reason they say, how do I measure it, is because what they want to be able to do is inevitably get more resources for it, right? Yeah. In other words, I'm being pressured to create more, therefore I need to know how to measure it so that I can justify my need for more technology, resources, or process in order to in order to accommodate that. Yeah. And and so in my mind, which is interesting, is that I actually think those questions are exactly backward. And and it's the interesting thing about why people like you and I get hired to go in and look at sort of digital marketing and or content marketing full stop is that question, which is exactly backwards. So in other words, instead of saying, how should I measure to justify the need for more technology, more people, or new processes, rather we should be asking, how are we going to scale our goal to justify what it is we should be measuring? And
I love that.
And so, it's a subtle but I think important distinction, because so many times I hear, well, we need a personalization strategy, or we need a marketing automation strategy, or we need a content management strategy. And it's like, no, you've already started on the wrong foot.
Yeah.
You're already trying to scale based on something that you don't know that you need to scale.
Yeah. Well, I approach that problem quite often with at the source and try and cut off the source of, do you really need more content? And there was this chap called Robert Rose that I worked with years and years ago that handed me a Simon Sinek book and talked about asking why. And I found that to be the most useful way of handling those kinds of conversations. Well, why? Why do we want to do that? Why do we create this piece of content? And then that gets you to the metrics.
Yeah, the real need, right?
Mm-hmm.
The real challenge, because so many times it's like, well, we need 200 pieces of content per month.
Why?
Why do we need 200 pieces of content per month? Because you're getting asked for 200. That doesn't mean that you need 200. Maybe you need 10. Maybe you need 500. And we're asking the wrong questions, and then what we're doing is looking at the easiest way to measure the request for the need. Yeah. In other words, how do I the things I can measure, like I look out, from my desk, from my cube or my Zoom room, and I can see I need 200 pieces of content per month because that's what sales, demand gen, the CEO, that's what is being requested from me. My team is creating 200. I can measure that. So great. It means if I can measure it, I can manage it. Thus, I need to figure out, great, if I need 200, well, next month I'm going to need 250. The month of that, I'm going to need 300. I'm going to need 400. So I need 2 more people in order to accommodate, stay ahead of that. You're always going to be behind the 8 ball there. You're always going to be behind in being able to scale, because scaling isn't chasing demand. Scaling is how do you add value faster than you add cost. Yeah,
absolutely. And if you look upstream as well, then the measurement is that it turns into not your problem anyway. Because if you're creating these 200 pieces of content because you're on a hamster wheel because somebody's demanding 200 pieces of content, then you should definitely be asking why. If sales say we need these pieces of content and they can't provide you with the measurement of why, then you say, well, then you're going to need to justify that cost, right? That's not for me to do that. Does that make sense?
That's exactly right. I mean, and so the other thing is that asking those 2 questions in that order, always then reinforces the fact that the content group, team, department, whatever it ends up being, is always in reactive mode, right? So we're always trying to scale based on a reactive mode, rather than saying, what should we be doing? And let me tell you how much you need.
Yeah. Well, what we should be doing is creating growth for the company.
Well, right.
So let's try and think about that rather than the fact that we need a bigger sausage machine that's going to throw out more content.
But we could all use a bigger sausage machine, don't you think?
I want the shiny one.
Yeah, it's getting weird. It's getting uncomfortably close to a really bad joke that would make us get into trouble.
Well, I'm the bigger marketing automation machine. And so when you're talking to clients about this stuff, how do you move them away from that way of thinking? Aside from the example I gave where you gave me this advice, but how do you work with current clients about that stuff?
It's funny. I was actually talking about this with a client just the other day.
Yeah.
Which is, to the extent that when we work with a client that they ever have an aha moment, and I'm very blessed in the sense that when we typically work with clients, there is at least one, sort of at least one aha moment where they get some value out of what it is we do. But when it is, it's really just working them through that process, because we rarely give ourselves in the business permission to think like that, right? In other words, our day-to-day sort of heads down focused effort is on meeting the demands that are immediately in front of us. And just taking that pause to say, hold on, let's just full stop ask why. I mean, one of my, I have a cute, if not overly simplistic question when I go into a client, and I'll say, if you just stopped producing like the business stopped producing content today, full stop, right? Just everything stopped. Who would miss it, right?
Yeah. I knew what you were going to say there. I love that.
And I mean, it's, obviously it's just a hypothetical, and it's a cute way to basically get to the like, right. We don't really know what's important is truly the answer there. But if you peel back that question even more, it's like the who would miss it is how would we even know that anybody misses it? Without them proactively calling us, right? In other words, we often get so focused on the day-to-day demands of what we are getting asked for. We just, to your point, we never ask why. Why is this? Why are we doing this? Because and one of the reasons that we're afraid to ask why is because the answer we might get might be because it's not important. You know what I mean?
You're saying that we create metrics around ourselves to justify our own existence.
I'm shocked that you would ever say such a thing. That we would game the metrics to make ourselves seem more important than we actually are. God, Ian, I mean, come on.
Is it, in your experience, is it, because I've heard of this, where people are actually measured on how much content they produce. Have you seen that?
Of course, all the time.
That's ridiculous in my head.
It is ridiculous at its face, but when you think about it, it's the one thing that can be measured, right?
Yeah.
It's our industrial revolutionary mindset of we even, how many businesses do you talk to that still call it a content factory?
Yeah.
Right? And so we call it a content factory because what are we doing? We're producing widgets of content, and we can measure the widgets that we produce.
Yeah.
I produced 14 blog posts. We scale. One of the things that happens so often is when you engage an agency, a content agency or a publisher or a freelancer, how do you engage them? You don't engage them by the quality of the content they produce. You're engaging them based on how many they're going to produce.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and you called me on that one because you are absolutely right. I've had those conversations many times, and if you are going to hire a freelance copywriter, then it is about the volume to a certain extent. But
it's the only way we know how to actually.
Yeah.
It's the first thing that because the assumption is that everything and it's not a bad assumption. It's not a hard, it's not a, it's at a certain level, you kind of have to look at it this way, right? Yeah. Which is the assumption is if I engage you, whether you're an internal employee or a freelancer or an agency, and I say, I need 10 blog posts this year or this month, I'm assuming that you're going to give me the 10 best you got, right? The 10, you're always going to work at your best to give me the 10 best you got.
Yeah.
But of course you're not. No. And the sort of understood but never stated thing is how many can you produce in that time frame that are great, that are differentiating? And you as the seller of those things don't want to say, look, I can only produce 8 that are amazing, because if you really need 10, then you may go elsewhere for the other 2. And you as the buyer don't want to know that, because you don't want to assume that 2 of those are going to be substandard. But you sort of, there's this wink and a nod that sort of goes, I know, they're not all going to be amazing.
Yeah. It removes the art of it, doesn't it? I mean, you write an awful lot, and I imagine even for you, you must sit there some afternoons, and a blog post probably takes you twice as long as your average, just because of the topic. And then other times it just flows out, and the quality of those two is probably equal.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, I write the same length every week, you know, and this is a clear, look, this is a clear best practice or whatever. Deadlines help, right? So having a deadline every week is definitely something to be, admired for all content creators. But
I don't think this podcast would happen if I didn't have a deadline and insist that I need to get this out every Friday.
In many ways, they won't. Actually shipping stuff actually does mean something. I totally get that. Yeah. But I mean, I do a weekly letter or weekly post or whatever it is, at least. Sometimes I do 2 and bigger pieces and research pieces and stuff like that. But at the very minimum, I do 1 blog post per week. And that blog post, yes, sometimes can take 15 minutes because I go, the muse hits and away you go. And, you literally, it's as fast as you can type it. Or sometimes it's my entire Sunday, right? And so, and you just never know.
No. And I try and do this regular Tuesday 2 cents, and it kicks my ass every week because I'm like, it's midnight. It's still technically Tuesday. And wishing I'd never called it Tuesday 2 cents and just bloody choose 2 cents. You know what I mean? So but if I didn't have that deadline, and I can't write it every
Wednesday's
week.
half a fist of nickels or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's as usual, Robert. Thank you very much. That's a great thought about the volume of content and reminding me that I need to do some. And have you written about this on your blog?
I have indeed. Yes. If you go to my wonderful website, which is contentadvisory.net, you will see a post entitled exactly that, which is what is the most important part of scaling. Yeah,
splendid. And and also to go back to when we originally met, I would also encourage people to seek out your first book and how to, to some of these basic things you're talking about how to get off that hamster wheel, I think are in some of your earlier writing. So I would encourage people to do that too. And if they're spinning the dial on those old interwebs, where would they find you?
Well, I can, other than the website, which I just said, contentadvisory.net, the best place is probably social media. And I'm most prevalent on LinkedIn and Twitter these days.
Yeah. And you're top of the search results these days.
Yes, it's been helpful to have some of those other Robert Roses out there sort of go by the wayside.
Well, it's a pleasure as ever, Robert. Thank you very much. And will I join you same time, same place next week?
Absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't miss it.
Thank you very much. See you soon. Thank you, Robert. As we mentioned, you can find Robert at his company website, contentadvisory.net. And I recommend you seek out his podcast, The Weekly Wrap and This Old Marketing, that he hosts with his chum, Joe Pulizzi. New episodes of both of these podcasts have dropped this week. So that's a wrap on episode 26 of Rockstar CMO Effing Marketing Podcast. And thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. Thanks again to Ian Lowe, to Robert Rose, and to our Rockstar CMO contributing community for a fantastic issue this month. But most of all, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you like my guests, please give them a mention, click their links, follow them, and take a look at their work. I really appreciate their time, so please show them some love. If you like the show, have an opinion on whether the world needs another effing marketing podcast, drop us some feedback or a review, subscribe, share, or just listen. I'm glad you're here. Next week, I'm hoping to chat to Emil Christensen, a CMO and host of a very popular marketing podcast in Denmark. But until then, I've been your host, Ian Truscott, founding editor of rockstarcmo.com, and I hope you'll join us again next week here at Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the boys' club of advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.